This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is. This world is not what you think it is.
Hi guys, this is David, disciple Lord Jesus Christ. Brother, if you've been baptized in Jesus' name for the remission of sins, and have received the gift of the Holy Ghost, speaking in tongues, the Spirit gives the utterance. So what inspired me to make this video is the death of Jeff C. He is greatly missed. He was one of the OGs in the truther community. Long before I made videos, he was making them, and he was around back when, before Sandy Hook happened, right? We were able to go ahead and cover false flags before the algorithm of YouTube now makes it so that you can't show almost any false flag without being terminated. So he was here before the extreme censorship and even survived during the censorship as best he could. He's had channels removed like the rest of us. I mean, I'm on my second channel. He's probably on his third or fourth. And we've been dealing with this for a very long time. But his untimely death in the middle of making a live stream, and it kind of seems kind of suspicious the way he went out, especially with what he was saying right before he died and bringing up shills and certain things like that. Very suspicious. But he inspired me to make this video, and so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to be talking about Carrie Mullis, Brandy Vaughn, David Goldberg, David Crowley. It's pretty crazy. I mean, some of these deaths, and I'm going to say almost all of these have something to do with the creation of the NWO, which we see going on right now. And it's all for them to not speak against, say, the medical martial law. A lot of these people came against Big Pharma, and they gave their life disseminating this information to us so that we would be in the know about some of these things that we wouldn't know without them. So let's start with David Goldberg, and we'll also be discussing Bill Cooper because he's the grandfather pretty much of all truthers. He's been around a lot longer than most of us and has come across some information about the New World Order and even where we find ourselves now before anybody. So we're going to be going into his mysterious death and some of the things he talked about. So let's get into David Goldberg, and we're going to go ahead and get into Operation Pogo and Zephyr, some of the things that he talked about right before his death, and it related to exactly where we are now. So it's no coincidence that he turned up suicided. Now let me show you the video that he put out that more than likely caused his death, because in here he spoke about pretty much before Event 201 what was going to happen with the documents that he was looking at. So now let's get into that, and we'll talk after.
We're talking about 0.5% of Americans who have some idea of Zionism and they're against it and they understand it. That number, according to these documents, is now about, I saw two numbers. They said 15%, and another one said 7%, but that is a very large number of Americans that have woken up to what's going on with Israel and Zionism and the Israeli lobby and the influence. They're unafraid to hate Israel. That number is very high, and it has them very concerned. This is much of what the classified documents talk about, but we'll get into that more. I wanted to set it up for you so you actually understand what this is really about. What I was given from the White House Insider. The main part that you really need to know, though, is they have a plan for all of this. So I'm going to talk about that now. There is discussion within these documents years ago to ban the YouTube channels, to shut it down, all of that. But they changed course. They made a decision to do something completely different. And they decided, instead of censoring everything, to fund and promote gatekeeper channels, shill channels, to simply gather and collect all the open-minded people who are looking at the issue. And they did shut down some of the legitimate channels, and that has actually happened. If you're following some of that, you are aware that there have been channels that have been shut down almost completely eliminated. Some of those channels were not a part of the original gatekeeper channels. They have no connection. They are truth-telling channels. Some of those they've eliminated that they felt were a threat or that might be calling out the gatekeeper channels. So, I'm just looking through some of the documents here and seeing what I want to talk about next. One really interesting aspect of all this is that the gatekeeper channels and the shield channels, typically these would be disinfo channels. Disinfo channels like Alex Jones, for example, has been a long time disinfo Zionist channel. Very, very active in deflecting people away from Zionism. Alex Jones talks about everything, but he never talks about Israel. So that is an active disinfo channel that's been around forever. What they created with these new gatekeeper channels is very truthful channels. They're very honest. They don't put out a lot of disinfo. They are actually legitimate. And that is done to give them credibility among these people who are awake, who are waking up. That was very specifically done, the documents to talk about that. Now I'm going to talk about what is the purpose of the whole operation, and the purpose of this is to put out truthful channels, to attract people to them. They call it tag, track, and ID. It is a term used throughout the documents, TTID. It's something you want to remember. This is very common throughout these documents. They're referred to all the time. So what does that tell you? They want to tag, they want to track you, and they want to identify who you are. If you are watching these channels, if you are informed, if you are awake on these issues, they want to tag you, they want to track you, and they want to know exactly who you are. They want to know, and it talks about the tracking people's IP addresses through YouTube. They have access to YouTube. They do know who you are. So this is discussed a lot in the documents. I'm just looking through it right now. And there are two projects, and it's very important to listen to this. Project Pogo is one of them, and Project Zypher. I will spell that one. ZYPHR. Project Pogo and Project Zypher are the two projects that the classified documents are referring to, and each has a different role. Project Pogo is about the YouTube gatekeepers, how they are all agents. They are all paid to put out truthful information so that they can tag, track, and ID the people that are watching the videos and giving them likes and giving them comments. They're tracking all of it. Project Zypher is a different project, and that's what I'll talk about in a bit. That is the second stage here. That is coming up. And that is the extermination. They're going to exterminate these people, whether it is tag them for anti-Semitic speech, charge them with crimes, eliminate them completely, and this is where I'll talk about in the documents where they talk about guillotines, viral attacks, targeted, how they're going to eliminate these people without too much suspicion, without too many people noticing. But here's the problem. As I read the documents, I can see I have documents from 4 years ago, I have documents from 2 years ago, and then I have documents from 3 months ago. So there's a progression in the timeline as the projects change. And Project Zypher has changed. In the beginning, they were talking a lot about, okay, we are going to infect these people with a virus that imitates the flu virus. They're going to eliminate them in various ways that would not be suspicious.
And as we know, empty hospital disease isn't real. But them having the idea in the minds of men that it is real allows them to go ahead and get rid of us with biological agents or any mysterious way that they can get rid of us, and then just say that we had empty hospital disease. They can just say that we have it and that that's the reason that why we died, and not many people would bat an eye or look more into your death after they would say that was the cause of your death. Now we're going to talk about Kary Mullis. He's the inventor of the PCR test. He also received a Nobel Prize for creating it and had to speak against certain people that were misusing it in the past. And he would do so currently if he were alive. So I'm going to show you some videos of him speaking about the PCR test and those that didn't understand how to use it, because he also says in his video that you cannot use it to identify any disease. All it's used is for a magnification of biological samples. So let's go ahead and hear out of his own words, and you'll see to why he died shortly, right before we get into empty hospital disease and this medical martial law charades that we're going through now. You'll know why they got rid of him, so that they can misuse his test and he can speak against them using his test, as he would be the key factor in telling you that yes, you cannot use this test this way, and it would be 100% fact. It would be a coffin nail to the way that they're misusing it. He also speaks against Dr. This guy. And here we go. Let's get into the clips.
I want to ask this to Kary. How do they misuse PCR to estimate all these supposed free viral RNAs that may or may not be there?
I think misuse PCR is not quite. I don't think you can misuse PCR. No, the results, the interpretation of it. See, if you can say, if they could find this virus in you at all, and with PCR, if you do it well, you can find almost anything in anybody. It starts making you believe in the sort of Buddhist notion that everything is contained in everything else, right? I mean, because if you can amplify one single molecule up to something that you can really measure, which PCR can do, then there's just very few molecules that you don't have at least one single one of them in your body, okay? So that could be thought of as a misuse of it, just to claim that it's meaningful. But the real misuse of it is that you don't need to test for HIV. You don't need to test for the other 10,000 retroviruses that are unnamed also in the subject. See, somebody that's got HIV generally is going to have almost anything that you can test for, because they have definitely been. HIV is a fairly rare virus. There's only 1 million of us out of 250, 300 million people in America that have that virus. So you have to get around, either your mother had to have it and pass it to you, or you have to really be paying a lot of attention to people that do have it and paying only attention to them, and get a pretty good chance of getting it that way. It's hard to get it, but if you have it, there's a good chance you've also got a lot of other ones, because you've been in the market for it's been possible for you to get a lot of. To test for that one and say that has any special meaning is what I think is the problem. Not that PCR has been misused. It's like. It's not an estimation. No, it's a really quantitative thing. It tells you something about nature and about what's there, but it allows you to take a very minuscule amount of anything and make it measurable, and then talk about it in meetings and stuff like it is important. See, that's not a misuse. That's just sort of a misinterpretation. It is. No, there's very little of what they call HIV, and what's been brought out here by Philpott and Isai already. The measurement for it is not exact at all. It's not as good as our measurement for things like apples. An apple is an apple. You can get something that's kind of like, if you got enough things that look kind of like an apple and you stick them all together, you might think of it as an apple. But and HIV is like that. Those tests are all based on things that are invisible, and the results are inferred in a sense. PCR is separate from that. It's just a process that's used to make a whole lot of something out of something. That's what
Also,
it is. But it's not. It doesn't tell you that you're sick, and it doesn't tell you that the thing you ended up with really was going to hurt you or anything like that. That's what it's not.
So even if you believe in HIV, it can't tell the difference between virus particles or active live virus. I mean, there's a lot of questions.
What is it? What is it about humanity that wants to go to all the details and stuff and listen. You know, these guys like Fauci get up there and start talking. You know, he doesn't know anything really about anything, and I'd say that to his face. Nothing. The man thinks you can take a blood sample and stick it in an electron microscope, and if it's got a virus in there, you'll know it. He doesn't understand electron microscopy, and he doesn't understand medicine, and he should not be in a position like he's in. Most of those guys up there on the top are just total administrative people, and they don't know anything about what's going on the bottom. You know, those guys have got an agenda, which is not what we would like them to have, being that we pay for them to take care of our health in some way. They've got a personal kind of agenda. They make up their own rules as they go. They change them when they want to, and they smugly, like Tony Fauci, does not mind going on television in front of the people that pay his salary and lie directly into the camera. You can't expect the sheep to really respect the best and the brightest. They don't know the difference, really. I mean, I like humans. Don't get me wrong, but basically, the vast majority of them do not possess the ability to judge who is and who isn't a really good scientist. I mean, that's a problem. That's a main problem, actually, with science, I'd say, in this century, because science is being judged by people. Funding is being done by people who don't understand it. Okay, who do we trust? Fauci? Fauci doesn't know enough to, you know. If Fauci wants to get on television with somebody who knows a little bit about this stuff and debate him, he could easily do it, because he's been asked. I mean, I've had a lot of people, president of the University of South Carolina, ask Fauci if he'd come down there and debate me on the stage in front of the student body, because I wanted somebody who was from the other side to come down there and balance my, because I felt like, well, these guys can listen to me, but I need to have somebody else down here that's going to tell me the other side. But Fauci didn't want to do it.
Now we're going to talk about Brandy Vaughn. She used to work for Merck, and she was a whistleblower and came out against them. And she's been a big, influential person in the anti-vax movement. And she had a death where they said that it was of natural causes, but we have some videos to where she even put out them gang stalking and breaking into her house, even though she had a security system. So these guys were on a different level that she was dealing with. So we're going to go ahead and watch that video of Brandy Vaughn, because she's also one of these people that you mess with Big Pharma and something bad happens to you.
Hi, I'm Brandy Vaughn, and for those of you who don't know me, I have been an activist speaking out against SB 277 here in California.
Wow, what happened to our rights?
Yeah.
How did I sit back and let this happen?
Yeah.
This is a very slippery slope.
In this fight, I have been under a little bit of heat, and I wanted to document this just in case. I wanted to show some of the intimidation tactics that I've been under.
There is a lot of shady stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
I got involved in this fight because I used to work for Merck here in Santa Barbara, where I live, and I worked there from 2001 until 2003, and I sold Vioxx for Merck. Vioxx was eventually taken off the market, and it was proven that Merck had knowledge that it increased heart attacks and stroke by 2 times, and it injured and killed a lot of people. It was eventually pulled off the market, and I lost a lot of faith in the healthcare system. I went to Europe, and then I came back with a 6-month-old son, and I was bullied at the pediatrician's office in San Francisco when I asked to see vaccine inserts and questions about them. That was a huge red flag for me, because I already had mistrust of doctors and the healthcare system in general, and pharma. And so I did a lot of research, and that was 4 years ago, and that was where my vaccine research started. And I realized that they were not very safe, actually, and not very effective, and I chose not to vaccinate my son. So when I heard about SB 277 in California, I decided that it was important that my voice was heard, and that I was speaking up against it and part of the fight. So when I made that decision 3 months ago, I know that I knew I was going to take some heat for it, but I wasn't quite sure how much heat. And so I'm making this video today to describe the intimidation tactics that have been used against me to try and silence me. The first one happened when I was coming back from the Capitol rally in Sacramento against SB 277.
We're not going away! We're not going away! We're not going away! We're not going away!
And I came home with a friend to my hide key being on my doorstep, open to the key. And the story behind this was a year ago when I bought my house, I hid that deep in the bushes, and 6 months ago I had looked for it because I thought, well, it's probably not a good idea to have a key to my house right outside my door. I couldn't find it, but when I came back from Sacramento, that one time, it was about 2 months ago, that the key was on my doorstep, open to the key. That day I had my locks changed, and I called an alarm service, and I installed a $3,000 alarm system 2 days later. So what happened apparently is someone opened the door, the front door, went through the front door, picked the lock, and my alarm went off, and they immediately disarmed it with the master code, which nobody had but me. I made sure nobody else had that code, and they disarmed it at the panel with that code. Panels inside. According to the alarm company, at 3:45 in the morning, somebody entered in through the front door, the alarm went off. They disabled the alarm by putting in the master code right away into the panel. And then at 3:46 in the morning, my hallway monitor sensor went off. So someone went down the hall. And then at 3:48, someone opened my dining room window and then closed it right away. And then if you notice, the dining room window actually faces out towards the backyard, which is much more private than the front door, which they used to enter that time. And then they went over to the keypad, entered the code again, and then left through the front door at 3:49. After the incident, I talked to some security experts who have actually done intimidation for corporations, and they explained a few things. They said, well, A, they were probably tapping your place, so everything I say and do in here is listened to, if not watched. And then opening of the back window, because it's a much more private way to get in for future reference, for future visits. When I did return home, and the police came in and made sure nobody was here, and then I came in after the alarm was set off, after the break-in. And what I did notice was they had left this window unlocked, like this. And before I left for Sacramento, all of the windows and doors were locked, double locked actually. I went through twice to make sure that they were locked. So after that happened, I didn't really feel comfortable sleeping in my house again, because of course they could come in and disarm my alarm whenever they wanted. There wasn't really another way to secure the system. I changed the code, but again, who knows how they got the code in the first place. The security expert is pretty convinced that the house is tapped, my phone is being listened to, my conversation, my text messages, and then my computer, both of my computers as well. The next thing that happened actually was with my computer. So one of the things that the police wanted to know was if anything was taken in the break-in. Of course, nothing was, because they weren't here to take anything. I did have a computer here in a hiding spot, and when the police were here, I did actually come and look to make sure the computer was still here, and it's here above the microwave is its hiding spot. It's not a place anyone would know to look for the computer, and it's not, you know, especially in being here in only 4 minutes. 2 days later, after that happened, after the break-in happened, I walked into my place to move some stuff out, and the computer was taken from its hiding place and put in the middle of the floor. And so I came back home to pick up some stuff. I wasn't staying here any longer. And that message was there, which was obviously very scary because clearly somebody had been listening in, if not watching, as to where the computer was. So after that, I decided that it would be best to get out of town, and I left town for a couple of weeks and really went off the grid for a good part of that. So after the computer incident and leaving town for 2 weeks, the day that I came back, I had a friend come with me, and him and I arrived at my place and found a ladder open right in front of my door, looking into the windows, the bedroom window. Now, this is my ladder, but this ladder lives in the garage. So it was clear that somebody had accessed the garage, brought out the ladder through the side of my house, opened it, looking right up into the window, and this happens to be the only window that I had blinds open. So that was quite a message. The security experts said, wow, what a better message than to say we're watching you. And this actually happened the day that I came back into town, so they clearly knew that, well, it happened the night before. They clearly knew when I was coming back. The neighbor who was feeding my dogs came over after half an hour after we found the ladder, and she asked, so what's with the ladder? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I didn't put it there. And she said, well, it wasn't there yesterday. So it means that it happened the night before I came back into town after 2 weeks. So clearly they are watching. The next incident was just 2 days later, and that's in the garage. This Buddha was on the floor. Normally the Buddha is pretty heavy. It was on here on top of the dog cage, holding the towel to cover it up at night for the dogs. So it was taken off of here, and there's really no way it could have fallen because, I mean, it's actually really heavy, and if it had fallen, it would have fallen, you know, some different way. But I walked in and I found it right there on the ground. The pictures were also knocked over. So then 2 days later, I noticed it first through the kitchen window, and it's not something I have ever seen before, but there is a duck. On my table. And when I talked to the security experts, I said, I don't understand the duck. And then it came to me that I had been on my phone having a lot of conversations about people asking me, you know, are you staying at your house? What are you going to do? And I used the term repeatedly, well, I'm not staying at my house. I feel like a sitting duck because they can get in at any time. And, you know, I'm a sitting duck. And so that was actually quite disturbing to come home to. Now I have a duck. I have never seen it before. It's not mine. Nobody else is having access that would bring a duck. It's a clear message that, again, they are watching me. And the intimidation is quite, you know, intimidating. And it's quite scary. So after all of these intimidation tactics, it's very hard to feel safe and secure, but I am not gonna go away. I mean, I'm not gonna be silenced because these are important issues and we need to expose what's really going on behind the mandatory vaccination bills. It has nothing to do with public health. It has everything to do with profit. And I hope that we can all continue this fight. We may have lost the battle, but we still have a war to win. And hopefully by documenting this intimidation, they won't be able to get away with it in the future with me and with anyone else who speaks out.
There is some evil going on here. And we need to fight it.
Next up is David Crowley, and he was making a video on martial law and what's to come with the mark of the beast through a medical martial law, right? And he was showing how the Masons / Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, are involved in this, that the high society elitists are involved in this martial law to come. And they took him out because he was showing about some of the stuff that we should not be looking at. And they've even hijacked his movie and made it into kind of like a documentary. And not only is it not what it was going to be about, they changed everything around, they hijacked his film, and it's not the same thing we would have had if he would have lived. So here's a preview of his movie, and it's another sad loss. I mean, crazy that they're getting some of these people that speak against them, especially that have power or influence that could actually reach people.
What is gray state?
Gray State is less a movie than it is a warning. We do not live in a dictatorship, but we do live in a police state. What we're going to see is the unveiling of this gray state foisted upon America. Americans believe that they can't do anything. And day by day, they're becoming correct. It's a game of numbers, and we're losing.
And there's something about it that just kind of gets on you and you just can't wash it off.
Credibility means nothing to me. What I care about is truth.
I don't think you're missing anything. The only thing you're missing is why.
Now the last, but certainly not least, Bill Cooper, which is like the grandfather of the truther movement, having a guest on talking about germ theory back in '93, long before any of us would have predicted any of this to come to pass with medical martial law. There's a weird, bad, mysterious death, too, about William Cooper anyways, or Bill Cooper as we know him. He was killed by sheriffs just for driving home as they were trying to confiscate information on his computer. You can only imagine what they were trying to get off of his computer, but they ended up shooting him dead. And it was a really sad story. You guys can look more into that, as you should investigate the truth. But we're going to get into a video real quick of him and his guest talking about germ theory. And this is important because he did this a long time ago, and he's predicted a lot of things. He even predicted 9/11 before it happened. So here we go. And this will be the final video, guys. Thanks for coming. Watch this and be amazed.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, you're listening to the Hour of the Time. Tonight, we're going to do something that we've been telling you we were going to do for quite a while. And without any further introduction, let's get into it. That's right, folks. It's the return of our medical sleuth, CAGI member Alex Loglia, who many months ago promised to return with his treatise on germs, and tonight, here it is. Now, because we don't have any medical experts here or laboratories with which to conduct these simple experiments, I'm going to have to advise you not to believe what you hear tonight, or from any other source for that matter, at any time. Listen to everyone, read everything, believe nothing unless you can prove it in your own research. We believe that there may be some validity to the information you're going to hear tonight, and that's why we're presenting it to you. However, whether or not it turns out to be true is going to depend upon whether or not we're able to conduct some experiments to either prove it true or prove it false. According to the premise in the tape you're going to hear tonight, the experiments should be fairly easy to conduct.
Good evening, folks. It's been a while since I was on with the last show on vaccinations, and before I get into tonight's subject, which is going to be about the history of the germ theory, I want to give you a little bit of information that I've had dug up in the interim about vaccinations. Particularly, I'm going to mention a couple of bills they're trying to push through Congress right now that you might want to contact your representatives about. I don't have time to go into detail on the show here as to what they're about, but I strongly suggest you contact your representatives about these particular bills. They are S732, the Comprehensive Child Immunization Act of 1993, and S887, the National Immunization Improvement Act of 1993. Both of these bills were incorporated into the Public Service Act of the Senate Budget Bill and passed by the Senate on June 25th, 1993. Also, H.R. 2264, Universal Access to Childhood Immunizations. This act was incorporated into the House Budget Reconciliation Act and passed by the House on May 27th, 1993. Actually, S887 and S733, which is the National Immunization Act of 1993 and the Comprehensive Child Health Immunization Act of 1993, are both still pending before the Senate Committee on Finance, so there is still time to get those particular bills turned back and to have them overthrown, so to speak. They're not good news, ladies and gentlemen, and really, this is a very important issue, so I hope you will take some action. We did have a minor success in that the National Immunization Registry, which was scheduled to open up in 1994, has been shot down, but I'm sure it will raise its ugly head again soon, so keep your eyes out for any information you may hear about a National Immunization Registry. Big Brother wants us to be experimental guinea pigs and wants to track us very carefully in reference to immunizations, and that's what that bill is all about. Now, tonight I'm going to be talking, as promised, about the germ theory, about a great fraud named Louis Pasteur, who was perhaps the single most malicious influence on the medical profession of the modern era. Before I even do that, though, I do want to make a little comment about the last show on vaccinations also, which I just recalled. I'd like to thank everyone who responded to the show. I heard some very disturbing stories, some very moving personal testimony from a number of people, and I really do appreciate all that. If you have any more of these personal experiences in reference to vaccinations or in reference to anything that I'm going to be talking about over the next couple of nights, please do write me. I will give you an address where you can get in contact with me at the end of the show. I love new information, and I love people's personal experiences, especially about vaccinations, because I am compiling some data right now to make sure that we never have to have compulsory immunizations. But if we don't do some serious work right now, that very well could become a reality. I do have a little correction also from the last show. One of my colleagues pointed out to me that I had mentioned Jonas Salk admitted that 2/3 of the polio cases were actually caused by his vaccine. Well, I did not mention the fact that this period that he himself was referring to was from 1966 to 1976. It was dropped out of my notes, but I just wanted to mention it because I never want to have it said that I willfully misled anyone or did not correct my mistakes. Okay, tonight though, I am going to be talking about the germ theory, and I am again going to be doing a lot of reading, and I'm doing this because you are going to require a tremendous amount of scientific fact to counteract the brainwashing that you've received on this subject. If you thought the information that I gave you on vaccinations on the last show was disturbing and hard to believe, let me tell you, this show tonight will be a stretch for you as well. We are talking about the germ theory here, the idea that germs cause disease, which is absolutely not true. Now, I don't intend to go into this with the purpose of simply shocking you and making you believe some very interesting new information. The reason I'm going into all the things that I'm going into over the next couple of nights, specifically the germ theory and AIDS, is because hopefully by the end of this series I will be ready to give you some of the information that I cherish the most in this field, which is how to be healthy. But before I can impart that information to you, I have to counteract all of the poor mental training and go against all the paradigms that you have built up inside of you since you were born regarding how you get sick, regarding what disease is, and regarding how to be healthy. But that is my ultimate goal. I do intend to do a show after all this, finally, to tell you the good stuff, what you can do to make sure that you can live a long and healthy life. Now, we have all been led to believe that there are these nasty little bacteria and viruses out there who are constantly attacking us, and when they're successful in their efforts, we get sick. In short, we've been taught for decades, actually centuries, that germs cause disease. But as usual, when we start to deal with truth and reality, what is really going on is the exact opposite of what we've been taught. Folks, disease causes germs. Germs do not cause disease. My own years of research, study, and experimentation have clearly shown me that diseases of all kinds do not stem from germs or viruses. Disease, as we know it, is the result of toxic inputs into our biological system, things like poisons disguised as medications, vaccinations, chemical poisons in our food, air, water, radiation, x-rays, drug abuse, including smoking and alcohol, stress, and destructive emotional states, and most important, poor nutrition. I'm sure many of you out there may think I'm a little bit off my rocker at this point, but do try to suspend your judgment just for a little while as I get into this presentation. You have to understand that modern medicine studies illness, disease, and death. They study dead bodies, diseased organs, and sick people. Modern medicine does not and has never studied health. You have to get this idea in your mind very clearly from the start. As a result of this attitude, medical treatment today is symptom-driven, meaning that modern medicine tries to mask, lessen, or eliminate the symptoms of disease rather than treat the cause. Folks, our bodies are absolutely amazing, and science knows at this point next to nothing about how our bodies really work in a profound and essential way. Science has a way of naming things, and thereby believing it understands. Scientists tend to identify symptoms, create a name, and find a germ, and believe they have understood something. But this way of looking at things is totally artificial and backwards. Now, listen to what I'm going to say very carefully. Disease is the cure, ladies and gentlemen. The disease is the cure. Through toxic drugs, vaccinations, malnutrition, poor eating habits, stress, pesticides, pollution, radiation, and negative emotional states, our bodies are constantly being poisoned, and our bodies are constantly eliminating all sorts of these toxins. It is this natural process of elimination that medicine has labeled disease. From the most mild things like colds all the way up to cancer. What we call germs are organisms and pieces of viral material which are constantly present in our bodies. To claim them as a cause of the symptoms just because of their coincidental presence would indicate very poor reasoning indeed, but this is exactly what has been done. Even more, it is this state of elimination, which we call disease, which medicine calls disease, which creates environments within our bodies where germs can thrive. But these germs do not cause the disease. Germs are the garbage men of our bodies and participate in the elimination and breakdown of toxins and waste products in our bodies.